The chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from 847 different species. Commander Jake Murphy stood at the podium designed for humans, though it felt more like standing in a spotlight for judgment. Around him, in rings that rose higher and higher into the domed ceiling, sat the members of the Galactic Council. Some had skin, some had scales, some were made of light or crystal. All of them were watching Earth's final plea for membership. Ambassador Lisa Hayes stood beside Jake, her hands clasped behind her back. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. 3 years of meetings, negotiations, and careful diplomacy. She had memorized every council member's name, learned their customs, studied their histories. She believed that good work and honest effort would be rewarded. Jake knew better. He had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat, and he recognized the look in the council's eyes. It was the same look he had seen in officers who had already made their decision before the briefing even started. "Honored members," Lisa began, her voice steady and clear. "Earth has completed every requirement for full council membership. We have contributed our technology freely. We have rescued 14 alien vessels in distress. We have participated in 7 peacekeeping missions. We have opened our world to your observers and followed every protocol you established." The council chamber was silent, except for the soft hum of translation devices. Jake watched the faces around them. Some looked sympathetic, most looked indifferent, a few looked openly hostile. Lisa continued her speech, presenting charts and data, showing Earth's economic contributions and cultural exchanges. She spoke about humanity's desire for cooperation and peace. Her words were perfect, practiced, and passionate. When she finished, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Council Speaker Thane rose from his central position. He was a being made of living crystal, ancient beyond human understanding, and his voice echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. "The Council recognizes Earth's efforts," Thane said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "However, we have concerns. Humanity expands too quickly. Your species is unpredictable, aggressive. You have been in space for barely a century, yet you already claim 30 systems. You build weapons even in peacetime. You question our decisions and challenge our authority." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Everything Thane said was technically true, but it was missing context. Humans expanded because they were curious. They built weapons because they had learned hard lessons about being unprepared. They questioned authority because they believed in thinking for themselves. "We will now vote," Thane announced. The voting process was silent, done through neural links that humans couldn't access. Jake and Lisa could only watch the display board as numbers appeared. The board showed 3 columns, in favor, against, and abstaining. The numbers climbed slowly, 10 in favor, 20 against, 50 in favor, 100 against. Lisa's face grew paler with each passing second. Jake's expression never changed. When the final count appeared, the silence in the chamber felt like a physical weight. 645 against, 198 in favor, 4 abstentions. Earth's petition for full membership was denied. Lisa's hand trembled slightly, but she kept her composure. Jake simply nodded once, acknowledging the result. "Furthermore," Thane continued, and something in his tone made Jake's attention sharpen. "The Council has decided that Earth's provisional status requires adjustment. You will limit your territorial expansion to your current holdings. You will surrender access to the Kepler trade routes, and you will reduce your defensive fleet by 70% within 30 standard days." The chamber erupted in a mixture of sounds. Some species murmured in approval. Others remained silent. A few made noises that might have been surprise or concern. Lisa stepped forward. "Speaker Thane, these terms are impossible. Earth needs those trade routes for basic supplies. Our defensive fleet is already minimal compared to other species. We have never threatened anyone." "The decision is made," Thane replied, his crystalline body reflecting the chamber's lights in cold, sharp angles. "You have 30 days to comply. Failure to do so will result in sanctions and possible military enforcement." Jake placed a hand gently on Lisa's shoulder, stopping her from speaking further. He stepped forward to the podium and looked up at the council. His voice was quiet when he spoke, but it carried through the chamber. "I want to make sure I understand correctly," Jake said. "You're denying us membership, restricting our territory, cutting off our trade, and demanding we disarm. Is that accurate?" "That is correct," Thane confirmed, with barely hidden contempt in his voice. Jake nodded slowly. "And if we refuse?" "Then the council will enforce compliance," Thane said, "with force if necessary." For a long moment, Jake simply looked at the speaker. Then he looked around at the hundreds of alien faces watching him. Some looked smug. Some looked uncomfortable. A few of the younger species representatives looked almost frightened. "I see," Jake said quietly. "Then I'll take this message back to Earth." He turned and walked toward the exit, Lisa following beside him. As they left, Jake noticed something. Several of the species who had voted in favor of Earth were giving them small gestures. A nod here, a subtle hand sign there. They were messages of support, given secretly so the rest of the council wouldn't see. In the corridor outside the chamber, Lisa finally let her professional mask drop. "Jake, what are we going to do? These terms will cripple us. Our colonies will starve without the trade routes. Without our fleet, we're defenseless." Jake kept walking, his pace steady and unhurried. "We're going to go home," he said simply. "And then what?" Lisa asked. Jake stopped and looked at her. For the first time since entering the council chamber, he smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Then we're going to remind them why humans don't ask permission twice," he said. Captain Ben Torres was waiting for them at the docking bay with the Earth vessel Resolute. As they boarded, he asked the question everyone wanted answered. "How did it go?" Jake handed him a data pad with the council's terms. Torres read it, his expression darkening with each line. "They want us to disarm?" Torres said quietly. "That's what they want," Jake confirmed. "And what are we going to do?" Jake looked out the viewport at Zenith Prime Station, at the hundreds of alien vessels docked around it, at the massive council chambers where Earth had just been judged and found wanting. "We're going home," Jake said, "and then we're going to have a very interesting conversation with Director Morrison." The Resolute undocked and began its journey back to Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its business, confident that the matter of humanity was settled. They had voted. The decision was final. Earth would comply or be made to comply. It never occurred to them that their vote might not matter to the species they had just rejected. The emergency meeting took place 3 days after Jake and Lisa returned to Earth. It was held in a facility that officially did not exist, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room had no windows and no recording devices. Only 12 people in the entire world knew this meeting was happening. Director Kyle Morrison sat at the head of the table. He was a man who looked like he should be teaching history at a university, not running Earth's most classified defense programs. But appearances were deceiving. Kyle had spent 30 years preparing for exactly this kind of situation. Around the table sat the people who really ran Earth's defense. Admiral Kate Williams commanded the Pacific Fleet. Dr. Emma Chen led advanced weapons research. Ryan Blake ran intelligence operations that monitored every alien species in the Council. And of course, Jake Murphy and Lisa Hayes, fresh from their humiliation at Zenith Prime. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Admiral Kate said, reading from her tablet. "They want us to cut our fleet by 70%, give up the Kepler routes, and stop expanding. And we have 30 days to comply." "That's correct," Lisa confirmed. Her voice was tired. She had barely slept since returning. "And if we refuse?" Kate asked. "They'll enforce it with military action," Jake said. Ryan Blake laughed. It was a short, sharp sound without humor. "They're going to attack Earth. The Council hasn't fought a real war in over 200 years. Their fleet is mostly for show." "That's what concerns me," Kyle said quietly. "They think they can intimidate us because they've never met a species that fought back. Every other race just accepted whatever the Council decided." Dr. Emma Chen leaned forward. "Maybe it's time we showed them something different." Kyle looked at her. "Tell them about Prometheus." Emma stood and activated the holographic display in the center of the table. An image appeared, showing a sleek ship design that looked nothing like the boxy Council vessels. "For the past 20 years, we've been running the Prometheus project," Emma explained. "Every time we got alien technology through trade or salvage, we didn't just study it, we improved it. We made it better, faster, more efficient." The display changed, showing engine designs, weapon systems, and shield configurations. "Council ships are slow," Emma continued. "They rely entirely on energy shields and directed energy weapons. They've been using the same basic designs for centuries because nobody challenged them. Why improve if you're already on top?" "And we challenged them," Jake said. "We didn't just challenge them," Emma smiled. "We surpassed them. Our ships are faster, more maneuverable, and our weapons are different. While they perfected energy weapons, we focused on kinetics, railguns, missiles, projectiles moving at incredible speeds. Their shields are designed for energy, not mass." Admiral Kate studied the displays with professional interest. "How many ships are we talking about?" Kyle stood and walked to the holographic display. He made a gesture and the image changed, showing a massive construction facility hidden in the shadow of Saturn's rings. 300 vessels, Kyle said quietly, built in secret over 15 years. The Council's observers never knew because they weren't looking. They thought we were mining Saturn's moons. We were, but we were also building a fleet. The room was silent for a long moment. 300 ships, Lisa repeated. The Council sent their observers to all our major shipyards. How did they not see this? Because we let them see what they expected to see, Ryan Blake explained. We showed them our public fleet, our mining operations, our commercial vessels. They never thought to look deeper. They were arrogant. They believed we were primitive and honest. "We are honest," Lisa said firmly. "We just didn't tell them everything." Kyle nodded. "The question now is what we do with this capability. The Council has given us an ultimatum. We can comply and become a second-class species forever. Or we can refuse. If we refuse, they'll attack," Lisa said. "Let them," Admiral Kate said coldly. "I've been studying Council military doctrine for a decade. They're predictable, slow, and overconfident. They'll send a force they think will intimidate us, something big enough to look impressive, but not big enough to actually threaten their other territories." Jake leaned back in his chair. "You're talking about war." "I'm talking about independence," Kate corrected. "The Council thinks they can dictate terms to us. We need to show them they can't. One decisive engagement, one clear message, and they'll realize Earth isn't like the other species they've bullied." Dr. Emma spoke up again. "There's something else. Our cyber capabilities. Council ships use networked systems that we've been studying. If we can get close enough, we can potentially infiltrate their command networks." Ryan Blake added his thoughts. "I've been analyzing Council psychology. Most member species have been part of the Council for so long they can't imagine it being wrong. But there are younger species, ones that voted for us, who are watching. If Earth stands up successfully, it might inspire them." Lisa shook her head. "This is insane. We're talking about fighting the entire Galactic Council." "No," Kyle said firmly. "We're talking about fighting the enforcement fleet they'll send. There's a difference. Most Council species don't have serious military forces. They rely on the combined fleet, which hasn't seen real combat in generations. And our people? Lisa asked. The colonies that depend on those trade routes? What happens to them? We've been preparing for that too, Kyle said. We have supply caches, emergency protocols, and alternative routes. It will be difficult for a few months, but we won't starve. Jake had been quiet for several minutes, just listening. Now he spoke. I need to hear it clearly. What exactly are you proposing? Kyle looked around the table at each person, then back to Jake. I'm proposing that Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. We declare our territory sovereign and independent. We give the Council 7 days to remove their monitoring stations and observers from our space, and if they refuse, we remove them ourselves. That's a declaration of independence, Lisa said. Yes, Kyle agreed. They'll see it as a declaration of war, she added. Only if they choose to, Kyle said. If they're smart, they'll accept it and leave us alone, but I don't think they're that smart. I think they're arrogant enough to try and force us back into submission. Admiral Kate smiled grimly. And when they do, we'll be ready. Jake looked at each person around the table. These were Earth's best and brightest, the people who had been preparing for this possibility for years. He thought about Council Speaker Thane's contempt, about the casual way the Council had tried to cripple humanity, about the message it sent to refuse and humiliate Earth's honest petition. There's no going back from this, Jake said. There was no going back the moment they voted against us, Kyle replied. They just don't know it yet. Jake nodded slowly. Then I think it's time we educated them. Lisa, draft the withdrawal notice. Make it polite but absolutely clear. Ryan, I want intelligence on every Council military asset within 50 light years. Emma, get the Prometheus fleet ready to move. Kate, prepare defensive positions at all our major colonies. He stood up, and everyone else rose with him. And Kyle, Jake added, send a message to Captain Ben Torres. Tell him to prepare the Resolute for combat operations. Lisa touched Jake's arm. Are you sure about this? Jake looked at her steadily. They voted against Earth. They thought a vote could contain us. Now they're about to learn that humans don't ask permission twice. The meeting ended, and the 12 people who knew Earth's greatest secrets dispersed to their various tasks. None of them knew if they were making the right decision, but all of them knew that humanity had reached a crossroads. In 30 days, the Galactic Council would learn what humans were truly capable of when they were pushed too far. Grand Admiral Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment, and watched the fleet assemble around him. 500 warships, the largest force the Galactic Council had gathered in 2 centuries. It was magnificent, overwhelming, and absolutely certain to succeed. Vorath was a Krath, a species that had served as the Council's military arm for generations. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin like polished black stone. He had commanded Council forces for 40 years and had never lost an engagement. Of course, most of those engagements involved showing up with a large fleet and watching the other species surrender immediately. Status report, Vorath commanded. His tactical officer, a Valorian named Kresh, responded immediately. All vessels are in formation, Admiral. We are ready to jump to the Sol system. And the humans? Vorath asked. Have they responded to our demand? Yes, Admiral, Kresh said, and something in his voice made Vorath turn. They sent a message 3 days ago. They have formally withdrawn from the Council and declared their territory independent. They gave us 7 days to remove our monitoring stations. Vorath made a sound that might have been laughter. Withdrawn? They think they can simply leave? This is exactly why we must act. They need to learn that the Council's authority is not optional. Admiral, another officer spoke up, long-range sensors show unusual activity in the Sol system. Multiple ship movements, particularly around their outer planets. They're scrambling their pathetic fleet, Vorath said dismissively. How many ships do they have? 50? Perhaps 75 if they count their cargo vessels? Intelligence estimates between 60 and 80 combat-capable vessels, Admiral. Against our 500, Vorath said. This will be over before it begins. Set course for the Sol system. We'll jump to just beyond their heliopause. Let them see our fleet and realize the futility of resistance. The fleet jumped, tearing through space with Council technology that was ancient, reliable, and completely unchanged for centuries. Why improve perfection? They emerged at the edge of the Sol system, and immediately Vorath's sensors officer called out, "Admiral, I'm detecting multiple small craft in the area. Appears to be a patrol group. 12 vessels total." Vorath studied his displays. The human ships were tiny compared to his massive warships, barely larger than fighter craft. "Are they attacking?" "No, Admiral. They're maintaining distance but following our movements." "Ignore them," Vorath commanded. "Set course for the third planet. We'll enter their orbit and broadcast our terms. When they see our fleet, they'll surrender." But the human patrol didn't stay ignored for long. As Vorath's fleet began its advance into the system, the small ships darted forward, using the asteroid belt for cover. They moved fast, far faster than Council ships could manage. Captain Sophie Martinez commanded the human vessel Defiance, one of the 12 ships in the patrol group. She had been waiting for 3 days, her crew running drills and preparing for exactly this moment. "All ships, this is Defiance," Sophie transmitted on the secure channel. "Execute pattern Delta. Use the asteroids. Hit and run. Don't let them get a target lock." Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Alex Grant, was already plotting firing solutions. "Captain, their shields are active, but their formation is tight. If we can get between them—" "Do it," Sophie ordered. The Defiance accelerated to speeds that would have torn a Council ship apart. The human vessels weren't built for comfort or for long voyages. They were built for one thing: combat. Every unnecessary system had been stripped away, every bit of mass reduced, every engine optimized for raw speed and maneuverability. Sophie's ship dove through a gap in the Council formation, her railguns firing in precise bursts. The projectiles, simple metal slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed, punched through the Council ship's shields like they weren't even there. The shields were designed to disperse energy weapons, not stop solid mass moving at relativistic speeds. 3 Council ships erupted in silent explosions as their reactors were breached. "All ships, scatter," Sophie commanded. "Regroup at Marker 7. The 12 human ships vanished into the asteroid belt before the Council fleet could even respond. Vorath stared at his displays in shock. 3 ships gone, just gone, in less than a minute. "What just happened?" he demanded. "The humans used kinetic weapons, Admiral," Kresh reported, his voice uncertain. "Simple projectiles, but moving at 0.3 light speed. Our shields weren't calibrated for mass at that velocity." "Recalibrate them," Vorath ordered. "And find those ships. 12 tiny vessels can't hide from 500 warships." But they could, and they did. For 3 days, Sophie's patrol group played a deadly game of cat and mouse. They used Jupiter's moons for cover, dove through Saturn's rings, and struck from unexpected angles. The Council fleet, designed for straightforward combat and intimidation, couldn't adapt quickly enough. Lieutenant Alex Grant developed a pattern. He studied how the Council ships moved, how they responded, how they communicated. "Captain, they're predictable," he reported. "They use the same formations, the same response patterns. It's like they're following a playbook." "Then we write a new book," Sophie said. "Target their command vessels. Make them afraid to lead from the front." By the end of the 3rd day, the Council fleet had lost 15 ships destroyed and 30 more damaged. They hadn't managed to hit a single human vessel. The human ships were simply too fast, too unpredictable, and too willing to use tactics the Council considered dishonorable, like hiding behind asteroids or fleeing when outnumbered. Vorath's confidence had evaporated. His crew was nervous. Worse, the rest of the galaxy was watching. The Council had promised a quick, decisive victory. Instead, a dozen human ships were making the mighty enforcement fleet look foolish. "Admiral," Kresh reported quietly, "we're receiving reports from the other fleet elements. Morale is declining. Some captains are requesting permission to withdraw." "We are not withdrawing," Vorath roared. "We have 500 ships. They have 12. Continue the advance toward Earth." But as the fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, they found more surprises. Mars' orbit was heavily defended. Saturn's rings contained hidden weapons platforms, and everywhere they looked, human ships darted in and out, striking and vanishing before the Council could respond. On the fourth day, as the battered Council fleet approached Mars, they received a transmission. It was Admiral Kate Williams, commander of Earth's defense forces. "Grand Admiral Vorath," Kate's voice was calm and professional. "You've lost 30 ships and haven't laid a finger on us. I'm offering you a chance to withdraw. Leave our system now, and we won't pursue. Stay, and things are going to get much worse for you." Vorath's pride wouldn't allow retreat. "You think 12 ships and some clever tricks can stop the Council? We are 500 strong." There was a pause, and then Kate spoke again. "Actually, Admiral, you're about to discover that we have more than 12 ships." That's when Vorath's sensors lit up. Coming from behind Mars, from the far side where they had been hidden, 120 human warships emerged in combat formation. These weren't patrol vessels. These were heavy cruisers, battleships, and carriers. Admiral Kate Williams sat in her command chair aboard the Earth vessel Vanguard and watched the Council fleet's reaction. Their formation was already disrupted from days of harassment. Their captains were nervous. Their admiral was angry and making mistakes. "All ships," Kate transmitted, "engage at will. Show them why humans don't surrender." The Battle of Mars began in earnest. The Council forces finally faced human ships in direct combat, and it was nothing like they expected. Human tactics were aggressive, creative, and constantly changing. Council ships that had fought in the same way for centuries couldn't adapt fast enough. Dr. Emma Chen's quantum disruption technology proved devastating. Human ships would get close, activate the disruption field, and watch Council shields flicker and die. Without shields, the ancient Council vessels were vulnerable to everything. Sophie's patrol group, reinforced now, specialized in surgical strikes against command ships. They had learned that Council fleets relied heavily on their flagships for coordination. Take out the command structure, and the rest fell into chaos. Colonel Derek Shaw, commander of Earth's Special Forces, led boarding actions against disabled Council ships. His zero-gravity combat teams were ruthless and efficient. The Council had never developed close-quarters combat doctrine because they'd never needed to. Derek's teams taught them why they should have. The battle raged for 18 hours. When it ended, the Council fleet was shattered. 287 ships destroyed. 156 disabled and drifting. Only 57 managed to escape back toward Council space. Grand Admiral Vorath's flagship was captured intact after Derek Shaw's team breached it. Vorath himself was found on the bridge, surrounded by his dead guards, staring at displays that showed the magnitude of his defeat. As Council survivors fled and the humans began recovery operations, the galaxy watched in absolute shock. The enforcement fleet, the Council's ultimate authority, had been destroyed by a species everyone considered primitive and aggressive. On Earth, Director Kyle Morrison received the battle reports and allowed himself a small smile. They had won the battle. Now came the hard part, winning the peace. The news of the Battle of Mars spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every species in the Council knew what had happened. The enforcement fleet, the Council's ultimate symbol of authority, had been destroyed by humanity. Not just defeated, destroyed. Council Speaker Thane stood before the emergency session in the same chamber where he had rejected Earth's petition just months before. But the mood was very different now. Where there had been confidence and arrogance, now there was fear and confusion. "This is unprecedented," Thane said, his crystalline voice cracking slightly. "No species has ever dared to resist Council authority with military force. The humans must be punished. We must assemble a new fleet larger than before and crush them completely." But the chamber that had once agreed with everything Thane said was now filled with dissenting voices. A representative from the Polari Collective spoke up. "With what fleet, Speaker? We just lost 300 ships and most of our experienced commanders. Our member species are afraid. Some are even questioning whether they want to remain in the Council." "Cowardice," Thane declared. "We are the Galactic Council. We have governed this galaxy for millennia." Another voice, this one belonging to Councilor Zeph, a progressive leader who had voted in favor of Earth's membership, rose to speak. "Perhaps that is exactly the problem, Speaker Thane. We have governed for so long that we forgot what it means to truly lead. We tried to force humanity into submission because we thought we could. We were wrong." "They attacked us," Thane protested. "No," Zeph corrected firmly. "We attacked them. They declared independence. We sent a fleet to force them back into compliance. And they defended themselves, successfully." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species supported Thane's call for revenge. Others advocated for peace. A growing number simply wanted to distance themselves from the whole situation. On Earth, the mood was very different. There was celebration, yes, but also grim determination. Admiral Kate Williams stood in the war room with her senior staff, studying intelligence reports that Ryan Blake had compiled. "The Council is fracturing," Ryan reported. "Our sources indicate that at least 40 species are considering leaving the Council entirely. Another 100 are demanding reforms. Only the old guard species, the ones who have benefited most from the current system, want to continue fighting us." "Will they try again?" Kate asked. "Not with military force," Ryan said. "They don't have the capability anymore. But they might try economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, or convincing other species to refuse trade with us." Jake Murphy, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Then we need to show the galaxy that Earth isn't going anywhere. We need to present an alternative." Dr. Emma Chen entered the room carrying a data pad. "I've been analyzing the technology we captured from the Council ships. It's advanced, yes, but stagnant. They haven't innovated in centuries. We could share our improvements with other species. Show them that progress doesn't have to stop just because you've reached a certain level." "We'd be giving away our advantages," someone protested. "We'd be making allies," Jake corrected. "The species that voted for us, the ones who are watching to see what we do next. If we show them that working with humanity means progress and opportunity, not domination, we can build something better than what the Council offers." Lisa Hayes, who had been working on diplomatic solutions, joined the discussion. "I've been in contact with several of the species who voted in favor of our membership. They're scared, but interested. They want change, but don't know how to achieve it without the Council's framework." "Then we give them a framework," Jake said. "A new one, not based on dominance and submission, but on genuine cooperation, equal representation. No species with absolute veto power over another's sovereignty." Kyle Morrison nodded slowly. "A confederation instead of a council. Member species maintain their independence but work together on common issues." "The Council will see it as a threat," Lisa warned. "The Council already sees us as a threat," Kate pointed out. "We might as well give them a real reason." Over the following weeks, Earth began a careful diplomatic campaign. Jake and Lisa traveled to dozens of worlds, meeting with leaders who were curious about humanity's victory and nervous about the Council's response. On the world of Polara, they met with the Collective's leadership. The Polari were one of the species that had voted for Earth, and they had suffered economic sanctions from the Council for doing so. "We admire what you did," the Polari leader said, "but we cannot afford to leave the Council. We depend on their trade networks, their technology, their protection." "What if you didn't have to choose?" Jake asked. What if there was an alternative that offered the same benefits without the control? He showed them Earth's proposal, a confederation of willing species, shared technology and trade, but no central authority that could impose its will on members. Each species maintained complete sovereignty over its own territory and decisions. The Polari leader studied the proposal carefully. And if the Council objects? They can object all they want, Jake said, but they can't force you to stay, and they can't punish you for leaving if you have the support of other species doing the same thing. Similar conversations happened across the galaxy. Earth's diplomats, backed by the reality of their military victory, offered an alternative to Council authority. For species that felt trapped or oppressed by the Council's rigid hierarchy, it was an attractive option. Meanwhile, Dr. Nina Foster, one of Earth's top physicists, was working on technology that would change everything. She had developed a new form of quantum communication that was faster and more secure than anything the Council possessed. She had also refined the disruption technology that had proven so effective in battle. We're not just offering an alternative government, Nina explained to Kyle Morrison. We're offering advancement. The Council stopped innovating because they had no competition. We're showing everyone what's possible when you keep pushing forward. Ambassador Kieran, one of the few aliens who had secretly helped Earth during the conflict, arrived on Earth for private discussions. Kieran's species, the Torathi, were old members of the Council but had grown increasingly frustrated with its policies. You've changed everything, Kieran told Jake as they walked through Earth's rebuilt diplomatic gardens. The Council maintained order through fear and tradition. You've broken both. Species that were afraid to question the Council are now openly debating whether to leave. Is that good or bad? Jake asked. It's necessary, Kieran replied. The Council became corrupt because no one challenged it. You've shown that challenge is possible. Even if your confederation fails, you've opened a door that can't be closed again. But the confederation wasn't failing. Within 3 months, 32 species had formally joined. Within 6 months, that number had grown to 80. These weren't the major powers of the galaxy. They were the younger species, the ones who had been kept at the bottom of the Council's hierarchy. The ones who had watched Earth's example and decided they too deserved better. The old Council tried to respond. They offered reforms, promised better representation, and threatened economic consequences for species that left. But the reforms were too little and too late. The threats were hollow. The Council had lost its military enforcement capability and its moral authority in the same battle. On Zenith Prime, Council Speaker Thane called another emergency session. The chamber that had once held 847 species now had less than 500 present. The rest had either joined Earth's confederation or declared neutrality. This cannot stand, Thane said, but his voice lacked its former confidence. We are the Galactic Council. We represent order and stability. Councillor Zeph stood to respond, and this time the chamber listened. No, Speaker. We represented stagnation and control. Earth showed us that. They weren't trying to conquer anyone. They just wanted to be free to make their own choices, and when we tried to prevent that, they defended themselves. Successfully. So you support the humans? Thane asked accusingly. I support progress, Zeph replied. I support species having the right to determine their own futures. If the Council cannot adapt to that reality, then perhaps the Council has outlived its purpose. The chamber fell silent. Zeph had just said what many were thinking, but none had dared to voice. Back on Earth, Jake received a message from the remaining Council leadership. They wanted to talk, not to demand or threaten, but to negotiate. For the first time in galactic history, the Council was asking humanity what it wanted, not telling them what they would accept. They're scared, Lisa observed as she read the message. They should be, Jake replied. They created this situation. Now they have to live with it. What do we tell them? Jake thought for a moment, then smiled. We tell them the truth. We never wanted to destroy the council. We just wanted to be free. If they can accept that, if they can reform into something better, we'll work with them. If they can't, we'll continue building our confederation and leave them behind. The galaxy was changing. The old order, maintained by fear and tradition, was crumbling. In its place, something new was emerging. Something built on the simple human principle that no one had the right to tell others how to live. The journey back to Zenith Prime felt different this time. Commander Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of the Resolute, but he wasn't alone. Behind his ship traveled a fleet of 200 vessels, representing 40 different species. They weren't coming to ask for permission. They were coming to deliver a message. Earth's confederation had grown faster than anyone expected. Within a year of the Battle of Mars, over 300 species had joined. They called themselves the Galactic Assembly, and they represented a new way of thinking about how species could work together. Ambassador Lisa Hayes stood beside Jake, reviewing the speech she would deliver. She had spent months working with representatives from dozens of worlds, crafting a proposal that balanced independence with cooperation. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than what the council offered. "Are you nervous?" Jake asked her. Lisa smiled. "Last time we came here, we were begging for scraps from their table. This time we're offering them a seat at ours. Yes, I'm nervous, but I'm also ready." The fleet emerged from hyperspace near Zenith Prime, and the reaction was immediate. The station's defense systems activated, then quickly powered down when they realized the fleet wasn't attacking. It was simply arriving. Inside the council chambers, the mood was tense. Only 600 species remained as active council members. The rest had either joined the assembly or declared neutrality. Council Speaker Thane still held his position, but his power had diminished greatly. Many of the species that remained were only staying because they didn't know what else to do. When Jake and Lisa entered the chamber this time, the response was very different from their first visit. Instead of contempt and dismissal, they were met with a mixture of fear, respect, and curiosity. Many representatives stood to acknowledge them. Even those who still opposed Earth couldn't deny what humanity had accomplished. "The Council recognizes the representatives from Earth," Thane said. His crystalline voice still carried authority, but it was tempered now with caution. Lisa stepped forward to the podium. She looked around at the assembled species, remembering the last time she had stood here. That day felt like another lifetime. "Honored members," she began, "we return to this chamber not as petitioners but as equals. A year ago, you voted against Earth's membership. You demanded we disarm, restrict our growth, and submit to your authority. We refused, and the galaxy watched as we defended that refusal." The chamber was absolutely silent. "But we didn't come here for revenge," Lisa continued. "We came to offer an alternative. The Galactic Council was built on the idea that older, more advanced species should guide younger ones. It's not a bad idea in theory. But in practice, it became a system where a few species at the top controlled everyone else, where progress stopped because there was no reason to improve, where younger species were kept in their place, never allowed to reach their full potential." She activated a holographic display showing the assembly's structure. "We created the Galactic Assembly based on different principles. Every member species has equal voice regardless of age or size. Technology and resources are shared freely. There is no central authority that can impose its will on members. And most importantly, every species maintains complete sovereignty over its own territory and decisions." Councillor Zeph stood to speak. "And what happens when member species disagree? Without a central authority, how do you maintain order?" "We talk," Lisa said simply. "We negotiate. We compromise. And if we can't reach agreement, we accept that and move on. No species has the right to force another to obey. That's the fundamental difference between the Assembly and the Council." A representative from an old council species spoke up. But that creates chaos. What about trade disputes, territorial conflicts, criminal activities that cross borders? Lisa had anticipated this question. We have frameworks for all of those issues, but they're based on consensus and cooperation, not on force. Member species choose to participate because it benefits them, not because they're afraid of punishment. That's weakness, another representative said. Without the threat of force, there's no real power. Jake stepped forward. Is it weakness that we defeated your enforcement fleet? Is it weakness that 300 species chose to join us rather than stay with the Council? The Council maintained order through fear and tradition. We're showing that you can achieve more through cooperation and mutual benefit. President Claire Anderson appeared on the holographic display, transmitting from Earth. She was a dignified woman in her 60s who had guided Earth through its most challenging year. Members of the Galactic Council, Claire said, we're not here to destroy you or replace you. We're offering you a choice. The Assembly welcomes any species that wants to join, including those currently in the Council. You can be part of building something new, or you can continue as you are. But you can no longer dictate terms to species that choose differently. Thane's crystalline form seemed to crack slightly. You're dividing the galaxy, creating conflict where there was unity. No, Jake said firmly. You created division by treating hundreds of species as second-class citizens. You created conflict by trying to force Earth into submission. We're not dividing anything. We're just giving species a choice they never had before. Ambassador Megan Ross, a younger diplomat who had helped build the Assembly, joined them at the podium. We have a formal proposal, she said. The Galactic Council and the Galactic Assembly can coexist. Species can choose which organization they want to belong to, or they can join both if the Council reforms its structure. We can establish joint committees for issues that affect everyone, like trade standards and scientific research. And if we refuse? Thane asked. Then we continue as we are, Megan replied. The Assembly will keep growing. We'll establish our own trade networks, our own research initiatives, our own defense agreements. We don't need the Council's permission to exist. We're simply offering cooperation if you want it. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were outraged at what they saw as human arrogance. Others were intrigued by the proposal. Many were simply tired of fighting a battle they couldn't win. Ryan Blake, watching from Earth's intelligence center, monitored the reactions. The old guard species are refusing, he reported to Kyle Morrison. But the moderate members are considering it. I'd say we have about a 60% chance they'll accept some version of the proposal. And if they don't? Kyle asked. Then we've already won, Ryan said. The Assembly is stable, growing, and becoming the default choice for species who want change. The Council becomes irrelevant. Back in the Council chamber, Councillor Zeph made a decision that would change everything. He stood and addressed not just the Council, but the galaxy that was watching this session. I move that the Galactic Council accept Earth's proposal to reform, Zeph said. I further move that we acknowledge the Galactic Assembly as a legitimate organization and establish joint cooperation agreements. And finally, I move that we formally apologize to Earth for our treatment of their membership petition and our attempt to enforce compliance through military force. The chamber exploded in reaction. Thane tried to object, but the voices calling for a vote drowned him out. Species that had been silent for centuries suddenly found their voices. The younger members, the ones who had always been told to wait their turn, demanded to be heard. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, the reforms passed with a narrow majority. The Council would continue to exist, but with a fundamentally different structure. No single species would have veto power. Younger species would have equal representation. And most importantly, the Council acknowledged that species had the right to choose their own path. Thane resigned as Speaker immediately after the vote. Councillor Zeph was elected to replace him with overwhelming support. His first act was to formally invite Earth to join the Reformed Council as a full member with no restrictions. This time, Jake accepted on behalf of humanity. As the session ended and the representatives dispersed, Jake and Lisa stood together looking at the chamber that had rejected them a year before. "We did it," Lisa said quietly. "No," Jake corrected. "The galaxy did it. We just showed them it was possible." 10 years later, Jake Murphy retired to a quiet life on Mars. The Galactic Assembly and the Reformed Council had merged into a single organization that actually represented the galaxy's diverse species. Trade flourished. Technology advanced at a pace not seen in millennia. Young species no longer waited centuries for permission to participate fully in galactic affairs. A memorial was built on Earth, listing the 3,000 humans who died in the conflict with the Council. The inscription read simply, "They voted against us. We voted for ourselves. Freedom is not granted, it is claimed." Jake visited the memorial often, bringing flowers for friends he had lost. One day, a young Polari student approached him. The Polari had been one of the first species to join the assembly. "Commander Murphy?" the student asked. "I'm studying the history of the assembly for my thesis. Can I ask you a question?" "Of course," Jake said. "Were you scared? When the council voted against Earth and you decided to refuse their terms? Everyone says you were brave, but weren't you afraid?" Jake thought for a long moment. "Terrified," he admitted. "Every day. But fear isn't what matters. What matters is what you do despite the fear. The council thought a vote could contain humanity. They thought we would accept their judgment because we were young and weak. But they made one critical error." "What was that?" the student asked. Jake smiled. "They forgot that humans don't ask permission twice. They gave us a choice between submission and freedom. They just assumed we'd choose submission because that's what everyone else did. But humans, we have this stubborn habit of choosing the hard right over the easy wrong." The student recorded his answer carefully. "That's going in my thesis. Thank you, Commander." As the student left, Jake looked at the memorial one last time. The names carved into stone represented sacrifice, but also possibility. They had shown the galaxy that change was possible, that authority was not absolute, and that young species could stand up for themselves. The Council had voted against Earth. They thought that vote mattered more than human determination. They were wrong. And their final error wasn't the ballot itself. It was assuming that the ballot would be the end of the discussion, rather than the beginning of a revolution. Jake walked away from the memorial with a slight smile. Somewhere in the galaxy, another young species was probably watching Earth's example and thinking about their own freedom. The lesson was simple. No one could give you dignity. You had to claim it yourself. And humanity had taught the galaxy exactly how that was done.